here we are. It's flown by pretty quick, but we are on the final Danny Phantom review for 2024. And it's the final episode of Season 2, and they saved the best for last. Because Kindred Spirits is not only a great episode of Danny Phantom, it is, in my opinion, a perfect episode of Danny Phantom. I have pretty much no complaints with this one. It is a outstanding watch, and I'm just surprised how well it holds up. I'm not sure how many people put this among their top 10 best, but following one of their worst episodes in Double Cross My Heart, they have now popped off with a great episode to finish off the finale and to end off Season 2. So, there's a lot to cover with this one, and I'm pretty sure it has a pretty dense plot too, so we're going to go back to the old format this one final time for this review. So, yeah, this is going to be quite the interesting one. And it's also got a pretty lengthy synopsis too, so I kind of did the last ones quickly because I just wanted to get them out of the way and done so that I could put more energy into this episode. Before we even start this episode, though, we need to first start by shouting out its voice cast. I promised I would do it, and that's what we are going to do now. Danny Phantom. Alright. Now, there's a lot of roles to read off of here, so please forgive me if I don't spend too much time on talking about each one. It's more of me just giving them a shout out, giving them a thank you, and give them their well-deserved recognition, because I should have been doing it since the beginning of these, but for whatever reason, I kind of forgot to, with a few exceptions of the big-name celebrities. So, yeah, here is my little tribute to all the voice actors of Danny Phantom, excluding the Season 3 characters. So we have our main cast. We have David Kaufman as the voice of Danny Fenton. He does a great job here. I think it's arguably the role that made his career. Grey DeLise Griffith, yes, the current voice of Daphne Blake in Scooby-Doo, is Sam Manson. Ricky Deshawn Collins as Tucker Foley is also great. Our favorite two-tailed fox, Colleen O'Shaughnessy, is the voice of Jazz. She does excellent. I didn't even realize she was Jazz until I looked it up. I'm like, oh, the same character that voices Tails is the one that voices Danny's sister. All these years, I could never, ever figure that out. Goes to show how much of an amazing voice actress she is, excuse me. I'm getting tongue-tied. Then we have Rob Paulsen voicing Jack Fenton. He's also the voice of Technus and the Box Ghost. And all three roles he does an amazing job. I mean, it's Rob Paulsen. Kath Souchi, hope I'm pronouncing your name right, is the voice of Maddie Fenton. She does a great job as well. Mr. Lancer's voiced by Ron Perlman. You know him best as the original Hellboy. And he is amazing in this role. Just absolutely amazing in this role. Then we have Martin Mull as Vlad Plasmius. He's great. Matthew St. Patrick as Skulker. He's great. S. Scott Bullock as Dash Baxter. He's great. Maria Canals as Paulina is great. James C. as Quan is great. Tara Strong. Yes, that's Tara Strong. Timmy Turner herself. Harley Quinn herself as Ember McLean. I kind of already gave a whole big praisal when I reviewed Fanning the Flames, so I won't go too in-depth with that one, but she does an amazing job in the role. And while I have some issues with how they use Ember in the later episodes, she's still great as the voice. Then we have Grey DeLise again as Valerie Gray, and she's also the voice of Star and Prince Dorothea. Great in all three roles. Well, all four, actually. Patricia Heaton's the lunch lady. She's great. I already said Rob Paulsen was the box ghost as well. S. Scott Bullock is also Klemper. He's pretty good. I already talked about Taylor Lautner as Youngblood. He's fine, but he was a very young kid when he did that role, so it's not, well, all that refined. But he does a decent job. Tara Strong's also Spectra. She does great. D. Bradley Baker as Lance is hilarious. Phil Morris, yes, that Phil Morris is the voice of Damon Gray. He's great. Jim Ward as Bertrand is really good. Perry Gilpin as Desiree is really good. John Cryer as Freak Show is really good. Tara Strong as Lydia is also good. Yeah, Tara has a lot of roles in this show. Michael Dorn's Fright Night's great. James Arnold Taylor, yes, that James Arnold Taylor, the one that voiced Leonardo in the 2007 TMNT movie, is the voice of Walker. He's great. We're going to talk more about this particular one later. Bob Joel's... nope, that's a spoiler. That's a spoiler. Sidney Poindexter is played by Peter McNichol. Great job. Kevin Michael Richardson is Skulker and the Dragon Ghost. Great as both. David Carradine as Clockwork is great. I forgot to give him praisal in Ultimate Enemy, but he was great. Then we have William Baldwin as Johnny 13. Yes, one of the Baldwin brothers. Interesting. Sheena Phillips, hope I'm pronouncing your name right, as Kitty is really good. D. Bradley Baker as an Observant from Ultimate Enemy is really good. What else? And the Observant 2 is Phil Morris. Colleen O'Shaughnessy is also the voice of Mikey. Vulture Ghost 2 is Rob Paulsen. Vulture Ghost 3 is Bullock, and he's also the voice of the first one as well. Mayor Martinez is voiced by Freddie Rodriguez. June Angela's Principal Ishiyama. Hope I'm saying that right. I'm probably not. Phil Lamar is Tucker's dad. Yes, that Phil Lamar, the one from Futurama. Kimberly Brooks as Tucker's mom's great. S. Scott Bullock as Jeremy's great. Lorraine Newman as Pam's great. What else? S. Scott Bullock as the parrot's pretty good. Kat Sauchi as Maddie is good. D. Bradley Baker as Operative K is excellent. And S. Scott Bullock is great too. AKA the two guys in white. Then we have the special guest appearances. And I can't read them all off because some of them are spoilers for Season 3, but they all deserve some recognition, so let's talk about them. Eric Roberts was Dark Danny. D. Bradley Baker was Prince Aragon. I'm pretty sure I pointed that one out in the review, but just a little bit of a reiteration. The Mummy Ghost from that terrible episode is voiced by S. Scott Bullock. He still does a good job despite the terrible material. James Garrett is Nocturne. He's pretty good. Brian Cox as Pariah Dark is great. Skulk Tech 9.9 is Kevin Michael Richardson, of course. Who else? Kat Sauchi's Box Lunch. She's good. Flight Attendant, Fenton Finder. I'm trying to remember which ones are from Season 3 and which ones from 1 and 2. I skipped over the Christmas episode during these reviews because, a Christmas episode in February makes no sense. But shout out to Will Arnett as the Ghost Rider. Yes, that Will Arnett, the exact one that you're thinking of. Then there's Paulina's dad, voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson. Background characters that are voiced by Colleen O'Shaughnessy and Gray DeLise Griffith. Or is it Gray DeLisle? Excuse me. I forget how to pronounce that. Let's see, David Kaufman's also Nate. Gray DeLisle is the waitress. The band kid and the punk are D. Bradley Baker. A lot of these are mainly a bunch of background characters, so. The ghost cop is James Arnold Taylor. Elastica is also Gray DeLisle. Any more? Or is that all of them? Oh, Tara Strong voices Baby Danny. That's cute. The Femme Alien, the Terminatra, and Nightmarica are all voiced by Gray DeLisle. That's really interesting. Any other ones that are really noteworthy? Gregor is voiced by D. Bradley Baker. He does a good job despite being given an absolutely abysmal character. Jeez, there's so many. I guess the last one I'll talk about is Rob Paulsen as the overspeaker announcer in a few episodes. Like when they have someone speaking on the intercoms and it's not one of the main characters, it's Rob Paulsen. So, yeah, as you can see, a lot of people did a lot of the roles. Not in just the main cast, but a lot of recurring guys too, for like background characters. Like they definitely pulled their load to make this show work. So huge shout out to all the voice actors. They did an amazing job. And there's one in particular in connection with this episode that we absolutely need to talk about. It's a name that may or may not sound familiar to you later, but we'll talk about more after we do the synopsis. So let's do that, now that we are already 11 minutes into the video. Yeah, this is a normal 22-minute episode, but in my opinion, it's one of the best episodes of Danny Phantom, and easily the best episode of Season 2. So, let's talk about it. Here's the full synopsis, spoilers ahead, enjoy. Vlad studies recordings of Danny Phantom during his battles with Valerie. He has his Maddie program analyze the data, which concludes that Vlad cannot complete his experiment without a mid-morph sample. 3 containment chambers behind Vlad open, revealing 3 different ghosts, one wearing a bedsheet, classic, one gray, muscular Frankenstein-like creature, and a tiny green blob. He sends them all to find Danny. Sam and Tucker are at a mini golf course wondering where Danny is. Danny shows up and pulls a prank on Tucker by making Tucker's golf ball intangible whenever he tries to hit it. Like, I'm not gonna lie, that was a really funny way to introduce Danny into the episode. Like, he is funny here. He is so funny. And the golf ball gag really, really got me. I was laughing at that one for a while. It's pretty good. Having the ball go invisible right before Tucker can, thwack it down the range is hilarious. Sam and Tucker get angry with him for being late, to which Danny begins to tell a wild story involving the Ghost King, but quickly admits he really just overslept. This annoys Sam and Tucker, who complain to him that lately they feel like he has been treating them less like friends and more like sidekicks. I mean, that's fair. Just then, the bedsheet ghost from Vlad's chamber appears. Danny and this ghost do battle. Danny removes the ghost bedsheet mid-battle, revealing a half-complete black skeleton with a green glow. Not gonna lie, I was not expecting that design under that sheet, but when it was revealed, oh yeah, this thing's really freaking cool. So, yeah, they took one of the most boring, generic ghost designs that you could think of and made it awesome by revealing what was underneath. A black and green skeleton. Awesome. The skeleton orders Danny to change back, but Danny blasts it away with a large ghost ray that also ends up destroying half the mini golf course. Oops. Danny flies away to protect his identity, accidentally leaving Sam and Tucker to take the blame when the golf course manager approaches them. Yeah, it's a running theme for the episode, but it also does well to show the point that they were making at the beginning of the episode, with them starting to feel more like sidekicks rather than being treated like friends, which in this episode is actually a pretty good running theme, so I don't mind them overusing this. Is it overused a bit much? Sure, but it actually works in service to the plot and the message they're trying to tell here, so I'm willing to give it a pass. Danny returns home while talking to his friends on the phone. Danny enters his room confused to see a 12-year-old girl sitting on his bed reading his comic book. She introduces herself to Danny as Danielle, his third cousin once removed. You know, that classic cliche about how these characters that look and sound like the characters we know but have one slight change. That overused excuse. It's definitely something we've seen before, but it's done well here, so again, I'll give it a pass. After getting her some food, Danny discovers that they share many of the same interests, including astronauts and Dumpty Humpty. Weird. I've never understood that name, aside from the fact that it was a clever pun to try to get around a lawsuit. But he remains suspicious of her. Danny leaves the room with her to call his parents, but Danny, I'm just going to call her Danielle because it makes it easier on me. Danielle is not keen on the idea and runs back into Danny's room. Danny returns to his room to grab her again, but now she's just gone. Danny goes ghost and leaves to look for her. Just as he leaves, the Frankenstein monster ghost from the chamber attacks. Danielle shows up immediately and tells Danny she knows who he is. She strikes a pose and to Danny's surprise transforms into a ghost girl. Yeah, she has Danny's powers. You see where this is going? There's one of two scenarios that's causing this. I'm not going to say which one yet because it's going to get revealed later. But her design's so freaking cool. She offers to help him fight. Working together, they make short work of the Frankenstein ghost. Danny questions her afterwards, but she fakes a faint, forcing Danny to have to take her back home. At school the next day, Danny tries to tell Sam and Tucker about Danielle, but they are not interested as they are still angry over the previous day, because they're the ones that had to completely rebuild a golf course from scratch. Yikes. Danny phases into the cafeteria through the table, knocking over Sam and Tucker's lunches. Danny drags her off to the side and, well, Danielle does that. Danny drags her off to the side and once again tries to interrogate her, but their ghost senses go off as the tiny blob ghost from that chamber comes in, destroying the cafeteria. Danny and Danielle chase after it, again leaving Sam and Tucker to take the blame when Mr. Lancer barges in and asks who started the mess. Well, it's more like since Dash is right behind them and he just blames them because they're standing right in front of him. Danny and Danielle chase the ghost across the empty park and start racing. Danny goes ahead of her, but he then runs into Vlad. The older half-ghost, more serious than ever, fights Danny. They appear to be evenly matched, but Danny's knocked unconscious from a shot from behind by Danielle, and realizes it was all set up by Danielle's daddy, Vlad. Vlad congratulates his daughter and then flies away with Vlad carrying Danny. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, when that part first came up, I'm like, oh, jeez, we're doing this. But the episode finds a way to actually redeem itself in a pretty clever way, which I will give it props for. So, like I said, not a huge problem, but it did kind of lead me to have a certain impression, and then that impression ended up getting disproven later on. But yeah, that's really cool. While taking out the trash in detention, Sam and Tucker see Vlad and Danielle flying away with Danny unconscious, and realize that he is in trouble and they need to save him. When Mr. Lancer asks the two why they haven't returned to the cafeteria, they quickly fake an excuse which infuriates him, including Tucker calling him an old man. Which infuriates him, and they run to Fenton Works as Mr. Lancer notifies Jack and Maddie about what Sam and Tucker have done while they sneak past them into their basement. Here's my question, why did he tell Jack and Maddie and not, call their actual parents? That's weird. It's not a problem, it's just weird. I guess Jack and Maddie are kind of like guardians of sorts for them? I don't know, it's weird. They then take the Spectre deflector and fly away in the Spectre speeder, using the boomerang, yes, this is back, to track down Danny just after the Fenton parents tried to stop them from stealing it. Danny awakens in Vlad's cabin, trapped and bound in Vlad's spectral energy neutralizer, aka a giant black and purple Rubik's Cube. With Danielle nowhere to be seen, Vlad reveals his plan to Danny. All throughout his life, he had used his ghost powers to become rich and famous, but all he wanted was love. Yeah, this is an episode that actually shows that Vlad is a sympathetic villain, and I think that's one of the reasons why he's so good. He's sympathetic, but it's done in a way that actually feels natural, and it's not forced just for the sake of the plot. He's done everything with these ghost powers that he wants. He's gotten rich, he's gotten famous, he's gotten pretty much everything he's ever wanted, but he's never been loved by anyone. And that fact is pretty sad. So in a way, he just wants someone to love and for someone to love on him. He just wants some kind of familial connection with somebody. And that's actually kind of relatable when you really think about it. So that's why Vlad's a great villain, because he is evil, he does do bad things, but he is, in a way, relatable. And you can kind of understand why he does what he does. Can some of his plans be really stupid at times? Sure, but he has a really good motivation behind it. And I give the team a lot of props for actually making a sympathetic villain that's not forced. So, yeah, I really, really like Vlad. He's always been one of my favorites. Because of this, he's trying to make a clone of Danny who, once complete, is going to be his own son, and then plans to kill Danny afterwards to keep him from talking. The other ghosts Danny encountered, including Danielle, are revealed to be clones that Vlad had deemed imperfect. Danielle, revealed to be observing them invisibly from the ceiling, is horrified to hear this. Because up to this point, she didn't know she was a clone. She thought she was an actual cousin of Danny, or in this case, Vlad's actual daughter. But she's not. And this is a bombshell, not just for the audience, because it finally gives us context about who Danielle is, but also the bombshell, of why she's even here in the first place, and how she's actually connected to Danny, outside of just the ghost power thing. Which is really, really freaking cool. So, I'll give them even more props for that. Danielle is a great character. Not to mention, she's not just a straight-up villain. She has a moral complex, just like Danny. So, I can see why she's a fan favorite, not only because she is a really cool gender-flipped version of Danny, but also because she's just a really good character. Like, she originally does this for reasons, to impress her dad to keep him happy. But then, when she starts realizing that she's a clone and everything that she thought she knew is a lie, she turns on him. Slowly but surely starts to turn on him. And despite his manipulation that we're going to talk about in a minute, she still turns on him. And she ends up becoming a hero just like the person that she was cloned from. So yeah, Danielle is a cool character, and I can see why she's a fan favorite. She's an awesome character. I really hope we get to see more of her in Season 3, but if I remember correctly, it's not for very long. Bummer, because she is a great original character that could have really been something had they fleshed her out even more. The one missing piece Vlad still needs for his perfect clone is a sample of Danny's DNA taken while he's in mid-morph. Vlad sends a tiny blob ghost, which turns out greatly resembles a teeny tiny Danny, to try and overshadow Danny and get him to transform. Danny tries to resist, and the ensuing amount of power released is too much for the neutralizer to contain, and it explodes, flinging the blob ghost and Danny away. Danny flees. Danielle, heartbroken, asks Vlad if she too is imperfect and sees the tiny blob ghost dissolve into ectoplasm, which only makes her more afraid because these imperfect versions are only temporary. Yeah, we have like an alien resurrection sort of scenario here, where you try to make these clones of this one particular thing, but it's either missing an element or you screw up somewhere in the process and they turn out to be just a temporary anomaly who later either begs for death because they're in so much pain, or they just dissolve against their own will. And when we see these characters and clones dissolve in this show, it is brutal. Like, I talked about at length with Ultimate Enemy being an extremely dark and violent episode, but this one has a body count, because we see more than a few clones dissolve into ectoplasm, and they're done in very horrifying ways. Which is one of the reasons why I'm also calling this a perfect Danny Phantom episode, because it has a strong plot, but it also throws in those great horror elements that made me love certain aspects of the show so much. Like, for example, the episode Doctor's Disorders, the whole scene in the hospital. I freaking love that stuff. Me being a horror movie nut. But seeing it in this show, especially done in a way that it's still violent, but it's not too much to handle, is impressive. Because not all shows can do stuff like this and either not get censored or not upset parents and think it's too violent. So, yeah. Huge props to the show for not being completely censored by Nickelodeon, and for actually taking risks almost every single episode, especially with these darker, more horror-themed ones like this. And it's another reason why I'm calling this a perfect episode, because, again, it has a great plot, and it's a great episode on its own, and then you just add the horror elements on top of it to really make it something memorable. So, huge props to the team for pulling that off in a great way. Vlad then lies to her, as he normally does, saying that he is going to use Danny's DNA to stabilize hers, because she too is currently unstable and could turn into ectoplasm. In other words, she could die. Believing his words, she sets out to find Danny. Danny tries to warn her that Vlad will not save her and is only using her, but she refuses to believe him, and he gets knocked out by her again. Danny then wakes up in a containment chamber. Vlad orders Danielle to overshadow Danny, but she argues against it as she is afraid the strain could melt her, since it melted the last clone that tried. Then Vlad harshly snaps at her hesitation, demanding that she follows her orders. Danielle realizes that what Danny said is true, and that she was really being used this entire time. Like I said, she has her moments, but she's not a straight-up villain. She is a hero character, she just was doing it for reasons that turned out to be false. Danielle then briefly cries, finally regretting what she did, then becomes furious with Vlad and releases Danny, deciding to take his side. They both transform, and they fight Vlad, knocking him into the chamber containing Vlad's perfect clone, destroying it. Then Vlad watches in horror as his perfect son-to-be dissolves into nothing. Like, that's brutal, because that's like a father seeing his own son die in front of his eyes. Like, it's something you never hope to see, but oh man, if you've been in a situation like that, that's gonna hit close to home. With his plan now a failure, Vlad eyes Danielle with pure rage and comes at her to get revenge for the loss of his son. And I put that in quotation marks. Danny steps in front of her and uses his ghostly wail, blowing away Vlad and forcing him to detransform and destroying most of the machinery in the lab. Vlad gets up and transforms again, coming in for another attack. Since the ghostly wail drained Danny of all his energy, Danielle steps in to defend him, despite her still unstable body. Luckily, she stayed when Vlad is suddenly hit in the head by the boomerang, the Spectre Speeder, and with Sam and Tucker in it, then crashes into the building, slamming into Vlad on top of getting knocked in the head with the boomerang. Stupid name, but it's also kind of hilariously cheesy. Tucker puts the Spectre Deflector on Vlad, turning him back to a human. Even without powers, Danielle is still able to punch him in the face, knocking him unconscious and getting revenge for all the lies he told her. Danny, greatly relieved to have his friends and now genuinely thankful for them, promises he will never take them for granted again. Danny begins to thank Danielle for her help, but then realizes that she's disappeared. Again. Then at Fenton Works, Danny, Sam, and Tucker face a potentially huge punishment from the infuriated Fenton parents and Mr. Lancer for skipping school, wrecking and stealing the Spectre Speeder, and insulting Mr. Lancer, calling him old man. They plan to call Sam and Tucker's parents to tell them the news as well. Suddenly, Maddie declares that there's no need to call the parents. Then Mr. Lancer strangely agrees and suggests to Jack that he could always just build another one, which Jack then happily runs off to do. In Danny's room, his friends are impressed that he seemingly overshadowed the adults from a distance, but he says it wasn't him. And then it's revealed that Danielle was the one behind it, as a thank you for, helping her with the situation with Vlad. She then introduces herself formally, then flies off, promising they will meet again. The trio then goes outside. Danny continuously thanks Sam and Tucker and expresses his appreciation for them, which annoys them. Danielle laughs and then flies away, promising to return, which ends the episode, and I need a drink because my throat is dry. That's better. Sorry about that. But yeah, that's the entire plot of Kindred Spirits. Can you see why I love this episode? It's a great, strong plot. It has a really good message about not taking your friends for granted. It has great horror elements. It has a great new character in Danielle Phantom. And it's just an amazing episode. Like, I don't really know what else to say. It's just an amazing episode with a great plot, great horror elements thrown in to make it even better, and an awesome new character. So, yeah, this is a phenomenal episode, if I haven't already made it clear. So let's go ahead and jump into series continuity and some trivia, and then we're going to talk about the voice. Series continuity. This is the last episode in which Mr. Lancer acts antagonistic. In later episodes, he acts serious and caring. Because Season 3 decided to be more of a straight-up comedy show rather than an action comedy show. Yeah. Let me just say next season's gonna be rough. When Danny wakes up in Vlad's lab, he's in the box that Skulker trapped him in Bitter Reunions. Nice callback. And we have some trivia. This is the first appearance of Danielle Phantom. In this episode, Danny has a blueprint of the space shuttle, which is nicknamed the Explorer Hartman, on his wall, a reference to the creator Butch Hartman. This is the first and only time that a certain someone is featured as the voice of Danielle. In her second episode, Destabilized, she's voiced by someone else. And the last time this episode aired on Nicktoons was on March 31st of 2021. Sorry, I'm making sure I'm not missing anything. Alright, let's talk about the voice now. It's what I've been building up to the whole time, because this one's gonna probably surprise a lot of you, that this is who voices Danielle. It sucks it's only for this one time, but she does such an amazing job in this episode as this character. Who voices her? None other than Anna Sophia Robb. Yes, that's Anna Sophia Robb. And if that name sounds familiar to you, if I pull up the IMDb page here, if it would like to load, you know her best as Violet Beauregard in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory remake from 2005. She was Leslie in Bridge to Terabithia in 2007. She was the main role of Bethany Hamilton in the biopic Soul Surfer. She's Susanna from The Way, Way Back. Any more worth pointing out here? No, I think that's the most notable ones. Just making sure I don't miss anything. Oh, she's Cleo and Yasmin in Robot Chicken. What else? She's Sarah in Race to Witch Mountain. She plays the young Millie in Jumper. And I think that's it. Oh, and she's Liza in Drake and Josh. So, yeah, she's in a lot of stuff. So, if she sounds familiar to you, that's why. Because she's one of those child actors that was a big thing back then and was in some pretty big name stuff. And even nowadays, she's still in some pretty big roles. So, yeah, she's a really talented young lady, and I grew up with many of these roles as a kid. So, yeah, she does a great job here. Not to mention that this role was her in between Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Bridge to Terabithia, which is interesting. It came out the same year as her performance as Violet Beauregard, and it only came out 2 years before her role as Leslie in Bridge to Terabithia. But her very first ever acting role was Liza in Drake and Josh. That's really interesting. So, yeah, she is a very, very talented actress, and I have nothing but respect for her. She's very underrated. And let's see, any upcoming projects? ECS Thelma and Rebel Ridge. I've never heard of any of the three. Yeah, I think that's all I can really say about Anasophia. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name, but you did an amazing job in this episode. You are a very underrated actress, and you just did a great job in this episode, and I can't wait to see what you do next. I may have never heard of either of these three projects, but I'll make sure to do some research after this video, because this video is already long enough. I mean, this is the longest I've ever spent on any singular 22-minute non-special episode of Danny Phantom. And it's because it's a big one. It's the final episode of Season 2. It's the final episode where Vlad's an actual good antagonist, because in Season 3, spoiler alert, he just devolves into a generic, reoccurring villain. We got a great new character in Danielle Phantom, which unfortunately we don't get a whole lot of in Season 3, which, huge bummer there. Huge missed opportunity there. It's a dark episode. It's also a very enjoyable and funny episode. It's everything that embodies Danny Phantom to its best degree, with little to no drawbacks. A few things are a bit weird, and maybe some parts can be a bit hit or miss, but most of the time I had a great time. All the jokes landed. I loved the dark moments. I loved Danielle's character. And since this was Vlad's final true episode before he, devolved into just a stereotypical clown villain, he went out with a big last impression. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. It felt important. It felt necessary, and it was also just fun and very enjoyable to watch. I don't really know what else to say that I haven't already said. Final verdict for this excellent episode, I believe, is our first and only episode of this season to get this score. Correct me later in the comments if I'm wrong. Kindred Spirits is an easy 10 out of 10. Easy. It's one of the best episodes of Danny Phantom. It's easily the best episode of Season 2. And I just absolutely love it. It's such a fantastic episode that I will never ever get sick of watching. It has its dark, scary moments, but it also has its goofy, fun, lighthearted moments, and it's pretty much everything you think of when you think of the best of Danny Phantom. Huge props to everyone involved. This was an excellent season finale. And with that, we have officially covered 2 full seasons of Danny Phantom here on Animation Station. It has been quite the experience, to say the very least, not to mention even more of an experience with this one since I didn't do multiple episodes per video, like I did last year, 2 years ago. And while I definitely have my problems with this season, I still think it's really good, and it does a good job building off the solid foundation that Season 1 left. So, yeah, I really enjoyed Season 2. It has its drawbacks. It has a few pretty bad episodes, but skip over those and skip over the average episodes, and you're left with a really entertaining, enjoyable, fun season that does a great job building off of what the first season did, while also adding in a lot more darker elements and getting a lot more daring with some of their concepts. So, yeah, I love this show, and these 2 seasons are, in my opinion, still more than worth watching. Season 2 has their problems, but it's still at least a 7 out of 10. I think I gave the first season a 9. Yeah, this one is a 7. It's nowhere near as good as the first season, but it's by no means bad, and it does have more than its fair share of memorable, enjoyable episodes, despite some of my criticisms. And I think that's all I can really say until next year when we cover the 3rd and, sadly, final season of the show. And oh boy, Season 3 is a mess. So, it's not going to be a very fun conversation to end it off with, but who knows, maybe I'll find some diamonds in the rough. But from what I remember, Season 3 is pretty mediocre, so... But we don't have to worry about that for a whole year. So until then, this is our final time going Ghost, and this is our final time for now with covering Danny Phantom. With the exception of any news that comes out about this apparent live-action movie that's getting put in development, so... Yeah. I don't really know what else to say, aside from the fact that thank you guys so much for watching. I've had a great time covering all these episodes of my favorite Nickelodeon show of all time. Well, favorite Nickelodeon cartoon of all time. My favorite Nick show is Drake and Josh, but I still really love this show, and while I've had more than my fair share of gripes with it, especially in this season, I still had a great time watching and reviewing these for you. Not to mention, this is some of the first time I've seen these episodes since I was a kid, so... Yeah. It was pretty nostalgic and fun going back to all these episodes that came out when I was still a youngster. And now as a 23-year-old man, seeing how both it does and doesn't hold up. So I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this almost every single day. And stay tuned because we're going to be taking a few days to, recharge. But we're not done in February quite yet. Because I said in my Facebook post that I have a surprise second marathon planned. And I think it's time I reveal that surprise theme. It's one that I'm really excited about. If you followed me on all my socials, you should have been able to suss it out already. But for those of you that haven't, well, let's just say...